Hello everybody, hope we're doing really well. I'm Mistress and you're listening to Mistress in the Darkness. We're going to be talking about real life horror stories. So if anyone has anything you want to put in there, please feel free to put your little, comments and stuff. Your little comments, they're good comments, they're perfect size. And we're going to be talking about, I'm going to be focusing on ones in Australia. I'm not 100% sure where the Darkness's ones are coming from, but who's seen the movie Wolf Creek? I mean, most people have. It was one of the first, really, it was one of the big horror movies, Australian horror movies, that put Australia on the map as completely different from any other country's way to make movies. It was gritty, it was, out in the outback and bush, it was the whole thing. But it's based on the real life events of Bradley Murdoch and Ivan Milat. I'm sure everyone's heard of Ivan Milat. Oh, well, everyone in Australia has anyway. I don't know about America. Bless you guys. Yes, so we're talking about a whole pile of different bits and pieces. So with Wolf Creek, it draws its inspiration from the real life events, but it doesn't hold true, obviously, because that would be fucking terrible. But it goes into, the real life serial killing of Bradley Murdoch. I cannot speak today. Cannot. I seem to be having that problem. Oh. So in 2001, two backpackers were travelling along Stuart Highway towards Darwin in Australia, so that way. And at Barlow Creek, they encountered a mechanic named Bradley Murdoch, who convinced them that sparks were coming out of the van exhaust. He lured them out of the car, lured Peter out of the car, and then shot him. Yep, he approached the window of Joanne, tied her up, dragged her to the truck, and then started to dispose of Peter's body, but Joanne managed to escape and is preoccupied. So there you go. She eventually found help and led police officers to Murdoch. That's how he was busted. Pew. Ivan Milat is absolutely ridiculously famous. He murdered 7 backpackers in the 1990s, and he is Mick Taylor in this one. So, yeah.
Now, I've got to interject there.
Oh, do you?
He was convicted of murdering 7. There is still speculation, even amongst the New South Wales police, that it was far higher than that, but 7 was all they could pin on.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, Australia has so much land and ground that we're not using. We don't have anything on. It's just bush. How many dead bodies do you think are out there? It's Nevada. Probably millions of them out there in the desert.
Have you seen any of the documentaries about the backpacker killings in New South Wales?
No, I haven't.
Supposedly, one of Milat's friends was driving with him from Canberra back to Sydney, and when you do that, you actually go past Belanglo State Forest.
Yes, you do.
Just outside Goulburn.
Mm-hmm.
And supposedly, Milat turned to his friend and said, "I wonder how many bodies there are in there."
Mm-hmm. There's 3 more after today. No, it's a bad joke. Yeah, there's so many, and I saw this little bit where they were going for a walk through it and just going, there could be easily bodies there. There's, and then they randomly find, people's watches and bits of clothing and bones and shit like that. It's they could be anyone. There could be so many dead bodies out there. But that's the thing. And if you want to watch the movie, make sure that mature audiences only. So at the top here, can't bust me. Yeah, it can get it's pretty brutal in some parts. Yeah. Obviously, I'm not showing a snippet of that. That is not going to happen. Ooh. What is this?
Alrighty, so it's my turn.
Mm-hmm, it certainly is, my dear.
Tonight, we are going on a little bit of a step back in time. It is all to do around medicine, malpractice, and murder. We are going back to 1828, to the centre of modern medicine, the city that was at the forefront of modern medicine. Do we have any ideas, Mistress, where that city is?
England.
Close, but no cigar, my girl.
I don't want a cigar, so that's fine.
Edinburgh.
Oh, okay.
In the
Should know that.
1820s and 1830s, Edinburgh was the centre of medical education in Europe and therefore for most of the modern world. Now, Edinburgh had become so popular in the medical fraternity now that Edinburgh University, which is one of the oldest universities in the world, had the best medical school that there was going. Now, there was such a high demand for students to attend Edinburgh Medical School that there ended up being 6 or 7 different anatomy and medicine schools within the university, each run by different doctors. Now, one of the things was to become a doctor back in the 1820s and 1830s, you could not graduate unless you dissected a body. Now, this was a bit of a challenge because times were vastly different to what they are now, and the only bodies that were allowed to be dissected were criminals that had suffered a capital punishment, victims of suicide, wards of the state, and often victims that had died in psychiatric hospitals.
Yeah, okay.
Nobody else was allowed to be dissected. It was,
and that was because of the church, wasn't it? So
Pardon?
because that was because of the church, wasn't it, that they weren't allowed to dissect other people because
Yes,
they belonged
indeed.
somewhere,
And,
so
well,
the
the
church wouldn't
reason
let them.
being was because on the day of resurrection, it was considered that if you weren't a complete human on the day of resurrection, you would never attend, you would never rise to heaven. So
But
therefore,
how many of us are complete humans now? I'm not a complete human.
So nobody wanted to donate their body to medical science. Now, this created quite a bit of a problem. And what was happening back in the day was that grave robbers started to pop up. And the picture that we have up at the moment is of 2 of the most famous grave robbers of the time by the name Burke and Hare.
Oh my God, that's a great movie.
Sorry?
They made a movie of it. Well,
They did.
A movie of the idea of it.
They did. Now, our next slide depicts an image that people were actually doing at the time to stop grave robbers. We have what is called a mortsafe, which was a metal contraption that was buried over the top of a grave to stop a grave robber from actually excavating the grave, breaking into the coffin, and removing the body. Now, when devices like this started to become vogue to stop the grave robbers in Edinburgh, the grave robbers had to come up with another plan. And the business of supplying bodies to the university was very, very, very lucrative. Now, our key participants in tonight's little saga, Burke and Hare, came up with a novel scheme. Hare was at home one day and he lived in a boarding house with his wife, or ran a boarding house with his wife, and one of the residents had died. So, in a discussion with his wife, they thought it'd be a good idea and the best way to get rid of the body to donate the body to the university. So he called up his friend William Burke and they decided to trundle the body off to the university in a shipping barrel, of all things, so it wouldn't be seen. So they arrive at the university and the doctor sent his porter down and they paid Burke and Hare £7 and 8 shillings for the body, which in that day was quite a lot of money, equivalent to about $5,000 today. So Burke and Hare were very, very pleased about this, and they went around all sorts of places trying to acquire the newly dead for the university so they could make more and more money. Well, the problem was they weren't the only game in town. There was other grave robbers. There was often gangs of grave robbers. And they became known as resurrection men. That's how common this was.
Resurrection men. That's cool.
Resurrection men. Now, as a result of being so many gangs plying the cemeteries of Edinburgh and the laneways and whatnot looking for recently deceased persons, it became harder and harder for Burke and Hare to make a living out of this. And then one day, Burke and Hare were at Hare's boarding house, and an argument erupted between Hare's wife and one of the tenants of the boarding house. And Hare was so enraged with the way this woman spoke to his wife that he actually strangled her.
Oh.
And as well as strangling the woman, there was also a adolescent boy who, at the time, they called simple-minded. They called him Simple Jamie. They strangled him as well in front of the fireplace, stuck both the bodies in a shipping barrel, and took them down to the university to a spot known as Surgeon Square,
Okay.
where they handed them over to to the doctor's porter and were paid handsomely for their service, and off they went. Now, this set off quite a little chain of events in the lives of Burke and Hare and in the lives of people of Edinburgh. This set off what would ultimately become a 17-person murder spree that lasted for almost 11 months.
17
Now,
people.
Burke and Hare became quite wise to their profession, linking the old town of Edinburgh to the university precinct was a bridge. Now, this bridge underneath it had a series of tunnels that would lead from the old city right to 20 metres beside Surgeon Square. So, what Burke and Hare used to do was they used to ply this area looking for victims. Now, one thing that was common of the time was if you didn't have a residence, a roof over your head, you could actually be either arrested or ejected from Edinburgh. So a lot of the itinerant people of Edinburgh used to hide in these tunnels. And it was so bad, so malodorous, and so dangerous that the Edinburgh police would not go down into this tunnel. So it became a true no man's land. And this is where Burke and Hare would pick off victims. They would find somebody, they would murder them, they would put them in a shipping barrel, and they would take them up to Surgeon Square and sell them to the doctor's porter. Now, this continued on for some time, and there's even speculation from a report from the doctor's porter that at one stage Burke took a woman into the dissection room of the University Medical School just to show her what it was like, plied her with whiskey, and then murdered her and put her straight on the dissection table. Now, this
Wow.
didn't even cause the doctor or his porter to bat an eyelid. They were
Hmm.
quite pleased to get a fresh corpse. And this went on and went on and went on until we reached victim number 17. Now, in an argument between Mr. Hare's wife and a tenant at the boarding house, they broke into Mr. Hare's room and they found a freshly murdered body under his bed. He was subsequently arrested by the Glasgow police, and he was very quick to turn what we know here as state's evidence against his
Mm-hmm.
good friend William Burke. Now, considering he turned state's evidence, he was given immunity from prosecution, and at the end of the murder trial, he was given a one-way ticket for his wife, himself, and his child out of Edinburgh, and got away scot-free.
Oh my
However,
gosh.
Mr. Burke was not so lucky. He was hanged at Edinburgh Prison, and
He was hung somewhere.
as a last act, his body was donated by the state to Edinburgh University, and it was dissected in the dissecting room at the university, and his skeleton still remains on display today at the Museum of Anatomy at Edinburgh University.
Oh my goodness gracious. There you go. Things I never knew. All the things I never knew.
Mm.
Yes, I do know my video has gone, and there's a reason for that. I'm just having a bit of a cigarette, and I don't want that to be on
Now,
the camera.
as a consequence of all of this, this actually created quite a stir amongst polite society in what we know as Great Britain. And the 1832 Anatomy Act was put into place. And that allowed for more bodies to be donated to university, taking taking away from the religious objection of the time.
Ooh.
So that really curtailed the grave robbing and also the murder sprees that were going on to fund bodies to the various universities. Now, as a footnote to this, the doctor that was involved by the name of Robert Boyd got away scot-free. Because he never actually paid for a body himself, it was always his porter,
Of course.
he was considered to be not involved in the commission of the crime.
Oh, goodness gracious. Like, that's just one
So
of those crazy
even,
things. So just because you didn't touch it, like just because it was one step of separation, I mean, it happens nowadays too, then it's not your
yeah,
fault. It's like, I get you to go and kick that person, and nothing to do with me, even though I told you to.
yes.
It's silly.
So even 200 years ago, doctors were more than willing to break their Hippocratic oath because they were more than aware that these bodies were murder victims. Because very often, when they would arrive at the university, the body would still be warm.
It's a little bit of a thing, isn't it? Going, it's still warm. No, I just left
Yes.
it out in the sun for a little bit. It put it in the microwave. It's fine. I was just interested because you keep saying scot-free, and I know the saying, but I didn't know where it came from, so I thought I'd have a quick look. It comes from Dred Scott was a black slave born in Virginia in 1799, and he attempted to gain his freedom, but it failed. But then he was made free anyway. There you go. So
So
that's
he
why
got
it's
away
scot-free.
scot-free.
Exactly, he got away scot-free, and he's
Oh.
there. You go. I just thought I'd have a look. Why not?
The things you find out on the internet.
Exactly. That's a great thing about the internet, isn't it? You don't have to sit there and go, oh, I don't know. I'm going to go to the library and go through an encyclopedia. You can go, I don't know that. Or, I might be wrong. Click, click, click. Oh, there you go. I am wrong. There's none of that. You could be right. Opinions. Like, no. If there's a fact, the fact's there. It's fine. Then again, you can probably find websites to,
Into the library, into the Dewey Decimal Card Catalogue.
Oh, yes, back in the day. I so wanted to be a librarian back in the day. Such a nice place.
Most like you couldn't have been a librarian because most of the librarians that I know are absolute bitches.
I could try. I just have a character, the librarian. Oh, that's a totally different type of TV show. We're not doing that on Twitch, by the way. So now we're going to just look. I'm not going to talk too much about it because we all know that I'm well under researched about everything because I actually thought it was Tuesday. Let's be honest. I thought it was Tuesday until about 4 o'clock this afternoon, I think it was.
Yes,
when I was
messaging. About 4 o'clock,
yeah, and I was messaging the darkness and going, okay, so I've got to get it organised, got to research. And he's saying, oh, I've got lots of things going on today. And I'm like, oh, that's right. As long as it's in tomorrow by 6:37, then I can add your bits. He's like, you mean tonight? No, I mean tomorrow. And then I had a look on it. Oh my gosh. So I've spent a whole of about 15 minutes. Most of the time I'm just putting it together and getting distracted by things. Everyone knows me. But anyway, this is about, so there's a small theme park in Sydney. I don't even know if it's open now. It was open.
It is.
Yeah, okay, because it did reopen. I knew that. There was so it's right in the centre of Sydney, right on the harbour, and there was a fire that killed a number of people. And this lovely thing on the side here is part of the last photo that was taken at Luna Park, and no one has any idea who this person is. That lovely masked stranger. Now what we're going to do, instead of me talking about it or knowing anything about it, I'm going to put on a video. Very short, but we can talk over it.
Looking back on this photo, one of the last to ever be taken of her family, Jenny Godson explained, quote, "It was all meant to be." To her, the unidentified masked figure standing next to her children was an omen and a sign that there was nothing she could have done to avoid
At the
what
bottom
happened
is
that
where
night.
whose
Jenny
video it is,
Godson
by the
knew
way.
the encounter was strange at the time, but it would not be until
Dark dogs.
hours later that the significance of the demon would become clear. In what came to be known as the Luna Park Ghost Train Fire, she and many others couldn't help but wonder if the mysterious man was responsible. For patrons of Luna Park, a large amusement park in Sydney,
Everyone
Australia,
knows that.
the night of June 9th, 1979 was turning out to be a typical
Varies
summer
and all
evening
sorts of things.
when inexplicable tragedy struck.
Space.
Around 10:15 p.m., thick black smoke began billowing out of the tunnel of Luna Park's ghost train. a popular indoor coaster that takes riders through scary-themed scenes with creepy sounds and special effects. Jenny Godson's husband and 2 sons were aboard the ride, having used 3 of their final 4 tickets. She, however, recalled being overcome with a, quote, bizarre urge to get ice cream, and had failed to join them with the last ticket. Workers sounded an alarm and scrambled to evacuate people from the train cars as they exited the tunnel. An hour later, the ride had nearly been entirely consumed by the inferno and was believed everyone had escaped. Firefighters examining the structure after the blaze, however, discovered 7 ill-fated riders still inside. It appears the riders had climbed out of the train in an unsuccessful attempt to escape the flames and smoke through the tunnel. Authorities believe they likely would have made it out if they had remained inside the ride like the other luckier passengers. Luna Park was immediately closed following the fire, and federal officials were brought in for an investigation. Authorities found that mismanagement and insufficient safety procedures likely contributed to the rapid spread of the blaze. Only 18 months prior to the fire, the North Sydney Council and the local fire department recommended that Luna Park management, quote, develop an adequate fire suppression program. The suggested remediation included the installation of a sprinkler system on the wooden ghost train, which the park failed to do. Because of this, investigators ruled that, quote, the actions of Luna Park's management and staff before and during the fire breached their duty of care. Despite the finding, the investigation did not find that Luna Park's behavior constituted criminal negligence, and the amusement park's operators were not held legally responsible for the loss of life. Initial media reports also incorrectly identified faulty electrical wiring as the source of the ignition. Because investigators were unable to identify the actual cause of the Luna Park ghost train fire, that fateful day has remained under increased scrutiny. Ever since the blaze, a number of curious incidents at Luna Park have led to allegations of arson, and several suspects have come under a cloud of suspicion. Shortly after the incident, Jenny Godson, whose husband Josh and 2 young sons, Damien and Craig, were lost, developed family photographs taken at the park that day and discovered this frightening image. The photo, taken only hours before the fire, is the last one ever of Damien Godson and shows him shyly standing next to a terrifying figure wearing a demonic mask made of cow skins with horns atop its skull. According to author Jack Marks's book on the ghost train tragedy, Australian Tragic, the man appeared as the leader of a dancing procession of pagan creatures and topless women. He seemed to pick the boy out of the crowd at random, approaching him, placing his hands on the boy's shoulders, and posing for the photo. Marks writes that the mysterious figures, quote, appeared to come from nowhere, and nobody was ever to learn who they were or why they were there on that day. Many have pointed out that the figure bears remarkable resemblance to the Canaanite god Moloch, who is especially known for his lust for child sacrifice. Some wonder whether this is simply an eerie coincidence, or if the unidentified person hiding under the demon mask could have started the fire that consumed the children. For Damien's mother, Jenny, however, the strange image served as an omen that it was all meant to be. Although the masked man garnered the most attention and theories about the fire, a new suspect emerged in 2007. Nearly 30 years after the conclusion of the initial investigation, the niece of infamous Australian crime boss Abe Saffron came forward, claiming that he had started the fire. The niece, Anne Buckingham, alleges that her uncle had coveted the park for decades, and even approached its previous owners years before the fire with a buyout offer that was rebuffed. The fire, she claimed, was planned by Saffron to trigger an eviction of the park's current leaseholders, so he could secure it for himself. Quote, I don't think people were meant to die, explained Buckingham. She believes the fire was merely an extortion attempt that got out of hand. The fire did prompt the owner to terminate the park's existing lease, and it was subsequently operated for 30 years by a company called Harborside Amusements Limited. Some, including an MP in the Australian government, have claimed Saffron had a financial interest in Harborside Amusements, though the company called it a, quote, wild and totally unfounded rumor. Investigators never did find a conclusive link between Saffron and Harborside. The allegations against Saffron still were not out of character. In the 2 years after the Luna Park ghost train fire, the crime boss was linked to 7 other fires at establishments across Australia with which he had financial ties. Authorities were never able to find evidence against him in those cases either, and he was never charged or convicted of a crime. For now, that leaves the Luna Park ghost train fire one of Australia's most mysterious unsolved cases. The masked man is still unidentified, and the investigation will remain dormant unless the police receive new evidence.
I remember it well, being just a little tiny bit older than you. I'd been there. I'd been there only a month or two before the fire, so it was something that was really, when it happened, it was really like, oh my god. Now, Luna Park remained closed for 6 years after the fire, and had to undergo a complete redevelopment, and it sat idle for about 4.5 years before the redevelopment started. Now, at the end of the video, there was a point where a comment was made that they believe that the late Abe Saffron may have played a part in the fire.
Yeah.
Now, Luna Park was actually, and still is, the ground that it sits on is owned by what is called the Luna Park Trust. Now, that is not a private entity, that is a trust organisation. And therefore, it's not in the hands of one single owner.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they say the speculation, especially in the last number of years, has been around the fact that the fire was done to redevelop the park into residential and put up apartment blocks and whatnot. Whereas actually, that wouldn't have been able to happen anyway, because beside Luna Park is Dawn Fraser Memorial Pool,
Yeah.
North Sydney swimming pool, which is owned by council. So the footprint of Luna Park is not very big. It's actually only a very small area of land. So if they had tried to demolish what was left of the park after the fire and turn it into residential apartments, there wouldn't have been a lot of ground to build apartments. And now there is apartments
They
all
don't
along the
need that
headland
much.
above Luna Park, which have a much better view than what you would get at water level.
Yeah.
So,
But
of
it's right
course,
at the water, though. Like, it's the fact that it's right at the water is, a selling point, because nothing's going to be in the way. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those silly things. Also, hi, Snaz, and wow.
Yes,
I'm assuming you're saying wow because of the great content that we spent hours doing. Some of us may have spent hours doing, the other ones did not. So yes,
it was a horrific event, and Luna Park
absolutely.
was a real scar on the city for quite a number of years. Because if you were over on the southern side of the bridge, you would look directly across at Luna Park at this derelict area standing there on the foreshore,
Yeah,
knowing what had happened there back in 1977.
yeah, and it did look like I I don't remember that. I remember going past during the day and thinking that it was closed, but I think that was just because when my parents had probably told me that it was closed, so we weren't going to go there.
It
Do you know what I mean?
reopened. It reopened again in 1983. I went not long after it opened, and it operated through until probably about 1989, 1990, when it went broke.
Yeah. Okay.
Then the park was redeveloped, and Luna Park came back in its third incarnation. Um, Less rides, but things like Coney Island and whatnot were still there, which is, one of the historic parts of the park.
I've only been
And
there
it's still
once. I have no
operating.
idea.
It's still operating today. And it is, interestingly enough, it is the only amusement park in the Sydney metropolitan area.
Mm, how
Sydney, the
crazy is
size
that?
of Sydney, 5.5 million odd people, and that is the only amusement park.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, you go look at, you look at Queensland, all down that coast, all through, and then you go all the way down to, where Movie World and Dream World and all of that are. But even up on the Gold Coast, there's like little theme park areas. You know, what I mean, they kind of separated out. Like there's a Ferris wheel, and then there's a,
Mm-hmm.
like it's all over the place. Like it would be amazing to be able to do that. Like that's one of my favorite things to do when I go to the Gold Coast is go around to all those weird, rooms that would be at a place like this, or, a fair or whatever. Complaining, yeah, people complaining about the noise endlessly. That is true. Well, then
There
in
was
that
even
case, if they don't want to do that, they can have a Dracula's.
there was even talk, Snez, about the noise of them having to enclose the roller coaster, which actually got voted down in North Sydney Council, so that didn't happen, thankfully. because it is the second oldest roller coaster in the Southern Hemisphere. The one in Luna Park at St Kilda is the oldest. Um, so you don't want to enclose a historical monument like that in some plastic, for goodness sake.
No, that
Suck it up.
wouldn't.
It's only for a few hours a day.
Yeah, exactly. Move on.
Yeah.
Come on, hop it. No, totally agree. Totally agree. Like, it's just, it's one of those things. Like, it's like if you go to Sydney, they've got the Queen Victoria building, and they put up all these bits and pieces around it. They were kind of like plastic covers, plastic copies of the walls as well. I understand they were
Yes.
fixing it, they were cleaning, they were doing all that kind of stuff, but it stayed there for so long. I think it's probably still there. Last time I was in Sydney was 800 years ago. Um, if I do ever go to Sydney, I will definitely do a stream at Luna Park. But yes,
But
that's
interestingly enough, mentioning the QVB building, I was actually reading an article out of the Sydney Morning Herald yesterday
mm,
from 1973 when they were trying to pressure the Council of the City of Sydney to demolish the Queen Victoria building. Can you imagine what a tragedy that would have been?
that's terrible. That building is beautiful, and it's right in the centre of such a busy place. So
Yeah.
you literally can duck in, because I used to work nearby, and I used to duck in there every day just to get away from the riptide of people. You wouldn't be able to find a spot on the sidewalk to walk, but you walk in there and there's people sitting there having a cup of coffee and a little scone and all that kind of thing. It's just this like oasis in the center of this absolute cacophony of nonsense, and it's lovely. That would be so sad. And it's so beautiful. Oh,
It
that would make
is.
me so sad.
And do you know how much money it costs to bring the Queen Victoria building back to life?
$39.95.
Close. $36 million was the cost of the renovation, I found out. Which, for the overall scheme of things and what was done,
So
was actually
true.
was a lot of bang for the buck.
Yeah. As Nez has said, we've lost so many amazing buildings because of progress or architectural trends. It is so very true. Like, that's one of the reasons why I really love like taking photos of the old buildings. Like, even if they're dilapidated, falling down and stuff like that, just simply because they're not popular anymore, and they're not considered, you know, what people want and beautiful and pretty anymore. Like, just the
Snaz,
old, even just the old weatherboards and stuff like that. I fucking love them.
yeah. Snaz, down here in Tasmania, we have a considerable amount of old buildings. Everybody thinks that we are smart because we haven't destroyed our old buildings and whatnot. But
No one
as you
thinks you're
said,
smart.
it's progress. But it was because there wasn't the money here in Tasmania and the real estate wasn't worth as much that we rode through that period of the 70s where everything was being demolished, and we retained so much of our built heritage that you can wander around the city and you can see so many buildings that are pushing 200 plus years old. We were
That's
lucky
beautiful.
in the fact that back in the 70s and whatnot, Tasmania was broke, so we couldn't afford to do it. But if you come to my town, we have the largest collection of Georgian sandstone buildings in one place in the world.
Holy crab
So
apple.
if you
Is that
love
an
old
invitation?
buildings, Oakland's Tasmania girl.
So that's an invitation. I take that.
Mm-hmm.
Not for everybody watching. I'm taking it. You can't have it. There's been a revival. Revival of people wanting heritage properties for private use. Yes, there has, because now it's popular to be like, oh yeah, I found those old. Like, do you remember? Oh, sorry, this is like years ago. There was a church in the middle of in New South Wales, out in the there was no local. I think there was a teeny tiny local shop, post office. Oh, and this is all one shop, by the way, post office shop, you know, thing. And that was basically it. There was a few houses around. There was this church that was for sale for, I think it was like 90,000 or something, Australian dollars. It might have been a bit more than that, but it was the classic. You walk in and just, really high roof, beautiful windows, everything like that. But it was in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, and I wanted it so bad. I wanted it so bad. I wanted to buy it. I wanted to, like, I think we were talking about fixing it up and turning it into, we were going to put a house at the back, like, you know, and then like a little shop thing at the front. And, you know, but it was just like, you know, those beautiful old buildings. Now everyone's going, oh yeah, I want it. And they're big and they've got high roofs and they're, you know, a bit more fancy. And, you know, they're so much better than the new ones, like the new apartments and things like that, which are literally just boxes. And we have one that's built not far from where I am, in a major area. And a person who was 6 foot tall could stand against one of the walls, reach out, and touch the other wall in their lounge room.
Fabulous.
Like,
Fabulous.
who wants that? Who wants to be I was going to say a turnip, that's not what I mean. Who wants to be tuna? Who wants to be like jammed into a can? It's just ridiculous. But that's what they're making nowadays. So it makes sense.
It is.
I know,
and,
all the cottages are beautiful, snazzy.
And if you actually know anything about construction or anything like that, and I spent a bit of time in construction, a lot of those buildings, there's a apartment tower out at Homebush that is unlivable because of the fact that they allowed self-inspection on all the building work, and the building is totally unsafe.
Yeah.
And people were paying close to, this was a couple of years ago, that it was actually declared unsafe. People were paying close to $1 million for an apartment in this building.
Yep.
And
same thing here.
Yeah.
The same thing here. My friend paid about $900,000 for an apartment, 2-bedroom. It was, as soon as I got there, when it was brand new, they still had writing on the cement. Like, it's just like literally cement. I'm like, is it not finished yet? Like, what's going on? It's like, no, it's finished. Now they found out there was, it's unstable. The pipes have problems. Everything has problems, and they can't sell it. Can't, like, no one wants to live in it. They can't do anything. Like, it's not bad enough that you can't live in it, but you wouldn't want to. It's always got problems. The water keeps backing up. Like, but they can't sell them now, and it's like, it's happening all over. So I think a couple of construction companies went broke, because of this. They've had to, like, pay out all this money, and they go, no, we're broke now. Bankrupt. Oh no, everyone has to live with it. Builders are being held accountable for the shoddy construction. Yeah. Oh, I think I'm about to, excuse me. Boop. I meant boop, not boop. Sardines. Thank you, Snez. Sardines, not tuna. Oh.
So yeah,
that was even in the video. Sorry about that.
Talking about buildings like that and whatnot, I've seen ones where the fire wall does not actually go right to the top of the building. It finishes like 10 centimeters from the roof.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
And that's just crazy.
Yeah, with the builders being held accountable, I think there's kind of that line as well, and everyone's going to have to fight for it. It's not like they're just going, yeah, it's shit. It's going to be so long until these people get any of their money back. And then, of course, lots of them, they didn't have $900,000, did they? No.
Yeah, they borrowed it.
They borrowed it, which means they're still paying for that. And then they're paying for new, like, the other accommodation, and they're paying their rates fees, and they're paying, you know, it's like, yeah. Exactly. No, I actually know a few people that, I'm not giving up names or anything, that the business went bankrupt, and then they just went, okay, cool, and started another one and another one. And one of the businesses actually built a whole pile of apartments that someone that I know very well lives in. And it turns out that was it. And the reason I found out is because the workers knew.
Yep.
Oh my good golly gosh, you know what I mean? Like, it's, sorry, I forgot about that bit.
I did a number of jobs for a big building, a reasonable size commercial building company back in the 80s and 90s. And one job I did for them, they screwed me for nearly $60,000.
Oh, that's a good price for being screwed.
Yes, indeed. And I spoke to a friend of mine who was a partner with one of the big Sydney law firms, and he said, don't try and chase it down, you'll lose your money. Because he said, I can guarantee as soon as we get them to court, he said, they will declare bankruptcy. And lo and behold, about 6 months after that, they did go bankrupt, taking down about 30 or 40 different subcontractors, but we'd stopped dealing with them at that stage. So, yeah, that's what they do. They just go, oh, no, we've got no money left.
Is there a government agency that tracks people down like that and holds them personally accountable? Like, is there actually one? Snez has said that she'd like to work in one. She wants to work for the one that does, but I mean, if there is one that does, they're doing a real shitty job. Like,
that's exactly right. Well, I don't know that there actually is, but I wouldn't trust them even if they were.
no, definitely. Well, that's one of the reasons. Like so I didn't work. Technically, I did work in construction for some parts, but I always worked in administration, office management, accounting, and the front, like running the businesses daily. So it didn't matter what business it was. So, I've done cleaning businesses, I've done construction companies, I've done, doing all the marketing and stuff. It's more just about how to run a business. That's what I know. So I do know when we were doing that with a construction company, you'd have to double check everyone's, certificates, everyone's, banking details. You didn't have their banking details, but you get a letter saying, yes, we have not been bankrupt. We have this much money we have this much money in our bank waiting, in escrow or whatever. So it's one of the things that happens, but like that doesn't give you any sort of comfort, does it? Because they still fucking do it. All they have to do is just go, the money rolls over, and then they go, oh no.
The stupidity to
start a company always.
To remain compliant, the crap you've got to do to remain compliant is no protection against bankruptcy, poor quality workmanship.
No, and it's so much work, isn't it?
Contract. It's all BS, and a lot of it's actually about getting money into the pockets of insurance companies, because they're the ones that actually then insure the job and whatnot, and it's just nuts.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
One policy cost us $30,000.
Yeah, it's absolutely stupid, and all the work you have to do, and that's probably not taking into consideration the amount of work that's been done on it to begin with. You know what I mean? Like the cost of it. Think about the man hours, how much that actually costs as well. Think about, like, there's so much. Like, I used to do so many things like that, and it was just hours and hours and hours, weeks and weeks and weeks. Think about how much they're paying people to do that, as well as all the shit. Like, I'm having issues now, thinking about having to do all that kind of stuff. I don't have to do that anymore. Yay. No, we should definitely set up a private company that just goes around and goes, you did this, you're bad, you're naughty. Puts like a sticker on their heads or something. So no more, you were bankrupt. Boop. Sorry, I know that's a strange thing to think, but that's what I'm thinking.
So where are we going next, Mistress?
Awesome!
I don't know, this is yours.
These were actually from the previous. All these slides related to the Burke and Hare.
That makes sense. Well, shit. See, this is what we need to talk about it. I'm like, okay, cool, so it needs these many slides. I didn't realise it all related to the same one. Silly sausage I am. So, this one is about the... yes. I got there. Slowly but surely, and of course, I've just, for some reason, everything's just closed down. Don't mind me. This is another Australian one. As I said, I'm focusing on Australia, and it is a group of people, and again, it was turned into a movie. So most of our, really, really hectic ones get turned into movies because we're pretty fucked up. Let's be honest. So this is this is the Snowtown murders. They are the Snowtown murderers. Those ones.
Bodies in the barrel.
The bodies in the barrel. So these fellas, they in 1999. The police in Snowdon, Australia, made a shocking discovery where they found 8 barrels containing bodies in the bank vault. 8. They became known as the body barrel murderers. They are John Bunting, Robert Wagner, James Vasquez, and Mark Hayden. They were a team of serial killers for years. Now, what's interesting with this one, and it could be a little bit interesting to talk about, is they focused on, so one of the main people was sexually assaulted when they were young, right? So he became very hateful and very aggressive, but he became very hateful towards pedophiles and people that he considered weak, because he thought that, the weak people, they don't deserve to be around. So that's basically why they did it. So at nearly 26 years old, Bunting committed his first murder when he killed 22-year-old Clinton someone or other in 1992. He said that he was a child predator. So they went through and he had a wall in his room, in his house, probably not his room, that had a whole pile of pictures of people that could have been pedophiles, all linked together, and where they were going to murder them. Like a trail of who they were going to murder. And the funny thing is, most of the people that they actually murdered are people that they knew well. So, friends of family, the uncle, this dude at the shop, whatever, people they've known for their lives. So they had gotten into their heads for whatever reason. Could have been true, if it was true, that they were kiddie fiddlers. So at 26, he killed the fella who was a child predator. He claimed he was, called Happy Pants. That's how he referred to him. He buried the body in a shallow grave, but the body wasn't found until 2 years later, and the police had no idea who the serial killer was. So they targeted gay men as well, because I guess his trauma. Obviously, killing gay men, no. That's not a thing. It is a thing, but it's not a good thing. In the spare room of his house, he had a rock spider wall, which is the wall I just discussed. So largely off rumors and things like that, they found all these people to kill, and they all became friends in 1991. Bunting eventually moved in with a couple, with Wagner's girlfriend and Robert Wagner, and assisted in the killings. He got married. Yeah, so they sat there and they actually did steal from them. They, went into their houses. Some of them were tortured. Some of them, there's a whole pile of different bits and pieces about it. And it's pretty damn hectic, the amount of people that they killed. And again, they found those barrels. But there was a discussion about the fact that there was a lot more missing people out there in their town. There was, and there had been a lot of trucks going in and out, obviously. So how many barrels were actually already gone into the fucking outback, into somewhere like this? So yeah, that's the thing. And the mother of one of them did know about it, and she was actually part of one of the killings, and so was one of the girlfriends. So they also got in trouble. But yes, there you go. So that movie is called The Snowtown. Yeah, it's called Snowtown. I haven't watched it, but I really want to. I'd like to see how they do it, and I didn't. I don't think I did the trailer for it. No, I didn't. Okay. I was considering putting the trailer for it in, just because it's such an interesting kind of premise. No, it's not a premise.
The theme of tonight is, if you are going to go out and commit murder, you are only going to get caught if you stick bodies in a barrel.
Exactly. And yes, a team of serial killers, it is rare, and they all had their certain jobs. They all had these bits and pieces like this, and they all tortured them and did stuff. But only one of them was the ringleader, obviously. And I think it's that fellow, the front one in the glasses, one of the pictures I saw, and the really long amount of research I did. He was the one that brought them all together, and he was the one who, already had the violent streak. And yes, we do not condone hate crimes. Thank you so much for that, Snez. Like, we needed to say that. But yes, vigilante killers, apart from the gay thing, unless for some reason they were gay kiddie fiddlers, in which case,
do you know
the gay goes away. Doesn't just take the gay away. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you know that at any one time, the Federal Bureau of Investigations in the United States estimates there is 80 active serial killers in the US at any one time?
There would be so many, but it was so much harder to be a serial killer now, and I really feel bad. No, I'm joking, but because social media and everyone being tracked and cameras everywhere, all that sort of stuff. Like, again, Australia, the outback. Not like I thought about any. We do always need to say we do not condone things, and I don't know if they got the inspiration from Dharma. I don't. No, I don't. I don't think so. I think it's just because that guy was, assaulted. Oh, and he was like almost beaten to death or something like that when he was a kid. So beaten to death and sexually assaulted by the same fella, which is obviously fucking horrendous, and that should never happen. Yes. Sorry. I got lost there.
SNES, I don't know whether most of them are in Washington State.
We didn't. I'll get their addresses for you next time, sweetheart.
Ted Bundy moved around a lot. A lot of the others, Dharma certainly stayed in one spot, but a lot of the others, and that's the reason why they're not caught, is they just shift constantly. They stay on the move. And I believe it'd be much harder to get away with murder in a small town than in a city. Because everybody knows everyone in a small town, whereas in a city, you just want to see just a number.
Yeah, yes and no. Also, small towns have less police. They've got more, area around the outside. Especially if you're a serial killer, then chances are you're very charismatic and things like that. If you're living in a small town, you'd have to be. There's lots of things you could do. I don't know. I haven't tried that one.
Give it a try. We want a completely researched academic paper on it before the end of the year, please, Mistress.
So I have to go and become a serial killer in a small country town and a serial killer in the big city. And if I get caught,
exactly,
I'll be like, okay, cool. What did I do wrong? Okay, now I need to do the other ones. What? You have to let me go because I'm doing a paper. Oh, fine.
Yeah.
Yep, no problem. There you go.
Yeah. It's a university research officer.
Yeah, it's fine. Oh, I do know that FBI states the most serial killers are based in Washington, D.C. It would make sense because the skills, are attracted to the government. This S killers, yeah. Well, they would be attached and attracted. So that would make perfect sense. Also, it's busy. There's very important people there. People don't. Again, you don't know who your neighbor is. That kind of situation. Like if you don't know who your neighbor is.
I do. I know who all my neighbors
did
are.
know there was a thing called dark tourism. There's a TV show about it. It's awesome.
Yep.
But that's pretty cool, huh? I'm like, I don't want to go to, Cannibal Land or anything like that, but it's interesting. I'll watch the show. Watch the show and talk about this show, but I don't exactly want to go and. All right.
Look, it all depends.
Is that the same? Was that attached to the same one again?
I have no idea where we are at the moment. It all depends. Some of the dark tourism stuff, it's very interesting, but some of it, no, I don't want to be involved in at all.
Yeah, no, some of it is, yeah. The only reason I'd be involved in it is so I could make it not happen anymore.
I think the first exposure to dark tourism I would have been probably about 5, and we went to, and this was before it was a real thing. We went to a thing about Fisher's ghost in Campbelltown, and we did a walking tour, and it showed us where Fred Fisher was murdered and things like that.
Oh yeah.
So that would have been about the first exposure I had to it.
Yeah, okay. I don't even know where mine would have been. We did lots of weird stuff when I was younger.
Snaz, you are 100% spot on. That was supposed to be from the previous chat we had.
This is why we need to not do it.
Broken hair. And yes, Snaz, you're spot on. That is exactly what it is. The human nervous system dissected off a cadaver.
I know. They're so gorgeous, they are. Like, that was something I really enjoyed seeing in, it just looks like trees. Do you know what I mean? It looks like tree roots going back into the earth. And sorry, I'm going to get all spiritual and hippie. I'll stop it. Dead in the tracks. See, I thought he had all these different slides for all these different bits and pieces, and that's why I separated it out the way I did, and that's why it is the way it is, and I was very wrong.
And that happens to be the remains of Mr. William Burke. On display in the Anatomy Museum in Edinburgh, Scotland. Nearly 200 years that has been on display. Nearly 200 years.
At least he's happy about it. Well, there you go.
And if you zoom in quite closely, you can tell that there was very little dental care in 1829 because he's lost most of his teeth.
Yeah, well, that could also just be he was poor. You've been watching Nazi docos. Oh, nationalist serial killers. 100% I agree with that. That is Nazi docos. What is going on? Like, didn't we talk about you doing stuff that's happy? Like, not watching Nazi documentaries?
Snez, there's some really, if you're watching stuff like that, Snez, there's some really interesting stuff from the opposing side. Start looking up, historical papers, books, movies about the Great Patriotic War. It'll show it from a very different side. And there's just the history that we are not told is quite staggering.
So what does it kind of focus on? I'm concerned about these. I'm concerned.
It focuses a lot on the atrocities that were carried out across Eastern Europe and Russia by the Nazis during the Second World War.
Okay, so it's still. Sorry, I was worried that it might be promoting Nazis as opposed to hating on them. Okay, cool. I'm like.
And when you actually start to look into it, you can understand why the absolutely ferocious violence that was unleashed after the breakout from Leningrad and Stalingrad was just so horrifically bad when you see what was actually done. And
it's terrifying.
You can understand why there was just so much fury unleashed in this orgy of blood and death that was the pushback right across Europe. Pretty horrific time.
Horrendous.
Pretty horrific time.
Oh, it's disgusting. Mwah. And there you go, that's it. Mwah, love ya. Should I like the little sound effect? Mwah, love ya. That's at the end of all of my videos. Mwah, so I don't have to do it every time. Because it's difficult, you know. I have to raise my arm and...
Subscribers, if you've got anything you would like us to talk about, please send us a message and let us know.
Yes, do, please.
It's much better if we get feedback from you guys.
Yes, we love talking to people, as you can tell. Like, also, Stain extermination. Oh, Stalin, sorry. Stalin, it's on the smaller screen. 12 million Russians, because they were poor.
Technically worse.
Hectic.
Technically worse.
Not as bad.
You know, what is not talked about is everybody talks about the 6 million that died in the Holocaust, which was of course absolutely horrific. But 25 million died in the Eastern Front in Europe, and that's civilians. So it was a horrific time for humanity. It really was. Don't
kill and torture and try to, get rid of an entire group of people. Don't kill and torture to begin with, and then just if you wake up in the morning and go, you know what, I don't like this type of people, I'm just going to exterminate them. Stop. Have your cereal. If you're still not happy, go back to bed. All right, just don't do it. Don't do it. There you go. I fixed all wars. Do you want to start a war? Don't. Have a Snickers. Go back to bed. Watch your favorite movie. Just don't do it. Just say no. There you go.
You've been, ladies and gentlemen, you have been told. The Mistress has spoken. You've been told not to do it.
And now there should be no wars, no murders, no anything. It's all sorted. I wash my hands. 100%. Oh my gosh. All right. So we'll be talking about something else next week. We actually managed to finish one. Fuck yeah! The internet is not shit
farewell,
right now.
Everybody. We will reconvene one day again very soon.
Exactly. Smell the daisies instead. Exactly right. Hang on, there's still a little... I did a thing and it laughed. All right. Now that I'll go now. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for joining us. And please come back next week. Same time, same place, same nonsense. We love you.
Good night, everybody.
Oh, yeah. Make sure to follow, subscribe, do whatever you need to do. Click the little buttons, blah, 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 blah. Do your bits. And come and talk to us.